The restaurant lights glimmered softly against the marble walls, but for Aaron Whitaker, they only sharpened the ache inside his chest. He sat alone at a reserved table in a quiet corner of a small Boston suburb, staring at the empty chair across from him, the chair he had hoped Sophie would fill tonight. Hours had passed, and every time the door opened, his heart jolted with hope, only to fall heavier each time. This wasn't just another missed meeting. This was supposed to be the night they tried again, the night they unraveled the last knots of a marriage that had been framed for years. But she hadn't come. The candles burned low. The food had long gone cold. And he was still waiting, fighting the familiar sting of disappointment that had become a shadow in their home long before the separation. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like these reach more hearts. Aaron wanted to blame her, wanted to let anger harden the softness that still lived inside him. But he couldn't. Not completely. Because he knew the weight Sophie carried, how life had stretched her thin, how motherhood and expectations and old wounds she never spoke about seemed to pull her in opposite directions. Still, he had hoped tonight would be different. He had rehearsed what he would say, how he would tell her he wasn't giving up, how he believed they weren't as broken as they feared. But the hours slipped by, and she didn't show. He finally stood, shoulders heavy, and turned to leave. That's when he saw her, their daughter, Grace, standing in the restaurant doorway with her small hands tugging nervously at the hem of her gray sweater. Her big blue eyes scanned the room until they landed on him, filled with a mixture of relief and worry. Aaron felt his breath catch as he walked toward her, noticing she wasn't alone. Behind her, just outside the glass entrance, he spotted the faint silhouette of a woman leaning against a silver minivan, her head bowed against the steering wheel. Grace stepped closer to him, her voice trembling as she whispered the words that froze Aaron where he stood. "Daddy. Mommy's crying in the car. She said she feels sorry." For a moment, the restaurant seemed to fall silent, as if the world had paused to give the moment room to breathe. Aaron knelt beside Grace, gently brushing her hair back as the realization washed over him, not anger, not bitterness, but a deep, aching tenderness. She had come. Maybe not inside, maybe not on time, but she had come. And she was hurting. Aaron lifted Grace into his arms and carried her as he stepped outside. The cold evening air brushed against his face as he approached the car. Through the window, he saw Sophie trembling, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her blouse. She looked up at him slowly, her expression filled with regret and exhaustion. And in that instant, Aaron felt the walls he had built all evening begin to crumble. He opened the passenger door, and Sophie's breath caught as she whispered an apology he could see had taken everything in her to say. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't let pain dictate the moment. Instead, he listened, really listened, to the tremors in her voice, to the fear behind her words, to the quiet confession that she hadn't come inside because she didn't feel worthy anymore. She felt she had disappointed him too many times, hurt him too deeply, pushed him too far. She had driven to the restaurant 3 times before finding the courage to park. And each time, she thought about leaving, terrified he wouldn't want her anymore. She wasn't late because she didn't care, she was late because she cared too much and didn't know how to face him. As Sophie cried into her hands, Grace reached out from Aaron's arms and gently touched her mother's cheek, her small voice soft but full of certainty. "It's okay, Mommy. We're here." And that was the moment everything shifted. The 3 of them walked back inside together. The staff had begun clearing the tables, but when they saw the family return, they quietly reset Aaron's table with fresh candles. It wasn't the dinner Aaron had envisioned, but it became something far more meaningful. They sat together, not as a broken couple forced into another difficult conversation, but as 2 people realizing their daughter still saw them as a team worth fighting for. Aaron watched Sophie's hands tremble as she picked up her glass, and he reached across the table, gently covering her fingers with his own. She looked up with startled eyes, expecting coldness. Instead, she saw the men who had loved her long before life became complicated, long before fear and misunderstandings had placed distance between them. The conversation that followed was raw and honest. Sophie spoke about the pressure she felt to be perfect, something no one had asked of her but something she had demanded of herself. Aaron shared how helpless he felt watching her struggle from the sidelines, wanting to support her but never knowing how to reach her through the walls she built. They laughed through tears, rediscovering small pieces of each other that had been buried beneath the stress of the last few years. By the time they finished, the restaurant was nearly empty, but their hearts felt fuller than they had in a long time. They walked out together, Sophie holding Grace's hand, Aaron gently placing his arm around Sophie's shoulders, tentative at first, but real. Hopeful. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a magical fix. But it was a beginning. A beginning they chose. Together. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful stories to the world. Special request, before the story ends here, please comment below what part moved you the most. And with that, Aaron closed the restaurant door behind them, stepping into the cool night air with his family by his side, grateful that sometimes the road back to love begins with a single, trembling apology whispered from a car parked just outside the door.